Hey guys, and welcome back. Sorry it's been a while. Things have been busy, semester start and whatnot. Anyway, first of all, I want to thank everyone for helping me get to 1,000 subscribers. I know it's a little late, but sincerely thank you. I think we're almost at 1,500 now, actually. So anyway, continuing on with the what started off as low budget R1 build, which has turned more into a scrappy kind of project. If you guys watch the Mike Patey channel. So in this part, I want to look at these rings. These were the rings that were in here before, and I think they're still okay. The engine didn't have any blow-by or anything excessive like that. The cylinders don't have any excessive scratching. I'm not sure if you can really see that great on camera, maybe here on the GoPro. Yeah, so I got a new GoPro. Let me know what you guys think of it. So yeah, all the cylinders look pretty good. There is some wear in there, but nothing terribly concerning, and no gouges or anything you can feel. So I see no reason why not to reuse these, as long as they're within spec. So what I'm looking at here is the piston ring end gap. So for the top ring, we have a limit between 0.15 and 0.25 of a millimeter. Or not a limit, a spec, and then a limit of 0.5 millimeter. So that's the end gap we're going to be looking for, which is measured 5 millimeters down into the bore. The second ring, or the middle ring, it's going to be a 0.30 to 0.45 millimeters is ideal, with a limit of 0.80 millimeters. And the oil rings are 0.1 to 0.4 millimeters. And they don't have a limit. They're usually fine though. There's not much tension on them. And they're also the closest to the oil. Measuring this does two things for us. It lets us know if the cylinder is still more or less the correct size and within spec, which I expect it to be, and if the rings themselves are. So of course I'm going to start with cylinder 1 generally and work my way across. I'm going to keep track of it on my paper. Probably your best friend when you're working with this. So we're going to be using a filler gauge and some calipers to make sure we're down in there far enough. So first of all, I'm going to set my calipers here, or I'm going to clean them and make sure they're actually going to 0 best possible. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to 5 millimeters. Try to anyway, we'll see. That's good enough. Lock that. So we're going to start with number 1 here, and this is going to be the top ring. I'm going to try to put it in the same way. I'm not sure if that even matters, but just to be sure. So I like to use the back of the caliper here to kind of measure that. Hopefully you guys can see. Get that ring at the correct height Yamaha asked for. All right. So now there, hopefully you can see that ring gap right, it's right there. Hopefully you can see it at the top. So I'm going to be measuring that with my feeler gauges. Remember, Yamaha would like 0.15 to 0.25 of a millimeter on this one. So since this is a used engine, I'm just going to start with 0.25 and see where we're at. Honestly, that's actually a very good fit, which is encouraging. That's probably what size it is. Let's try the 0.28 millimeter here. No, it won't really go in. So that one is probably a 0.25. I'll try the 0.23 here as well. That one goes all the way in nice. So the number 1 here is going to be a 0.25 of a millimeter. That's well within spec and good. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next ring here. The middle ring on piston 1. Try not to dump the pins on the ground. When you're taking rings off, just be careful as possible. So I'm going to get it close there. Then again, I'm going to go in here and measure it with my caliper that's locked at 5 mil. When it's too far down, I'm just pulling it up into the caliper. Okay. So hopefully you can see here on this ring there, that little gap. Hopefully you can see the gap there, so we're going to measure that. This one calls for 0.3 to 0.45 of a millimeter with a big 0.8 0.80 wear limit. So I'm going to start with the 0.4, 0.45 here, the biggest one. Just want to make sure it slips in there. So that one goes in pretty easy. That's okay. But the 0.5 won't go in there, the 1/2 mil. But the 0.45 will. I think. Maybe not. Yeah, it just barely goes in there. So it's probably like a 0.45, 0.46. So there, of course, the wear limit is 0.8. So right now we're on the outside of the ideal ring gap according to Yamaha for both of these, which for this is pretty good. I don't really know how many miles this motor had on it, but I suspect it was a few. I'll take that out before I drop it. Try to do a little oil ring here. Try to anyway. That thing is thin. This one's 0.1 to 0.4. I'm just going to start with the 0.4. As long as that is not too loose, we're good. Yeah, that's fine. These are hard to measure because they're so thin. They don't have any spring tension. It's fine. We're going to assume since the other ones were fine, it's fine too. So we're going to go ahead and move to the second piston here. Alright, so we got the 0.25 to 0.15. I would say this one's probably the most important. So I'm going to start the 0.2 here. This one looks a bit tighter. That goes in fine. 0.23. 0.23 can be forced in. So yeah, it's that one's pretty good. I would say probably like 0.21 or something. 0.22. You can already tell by looking at that one's going to be pretty good. Try this 0.38 here. Yeah, it goes in fine. Try the 0.45, which is the upper limit. Or not the upper limit, but the upper recommended limit. That one's pretty close. That won't go in at all. It's probably like a 0.46. So that one's pretty good too. So both of those look good for number 2. I'll go ahead and attempt to measure the oil rings here. .45 won't go in, so we assume that one's fine. See the 0.4 will. I can find it. Show the 0.38 when we're here. 0.38 won't quite go in, so that one's good. That one's good. Okay, so far so good on the rings on the first 2 pistons and cylinders. We're pretty much right in here in spec. Okay, so continuing on with cylinder number 3 here. And pull that pin out, or drop it as well. Alright. .2 is pretty tight in there, that's really good. .25 will not go in. 0.23 will, so we'll call it a 0.23. So far, so good. All right, now we'll go on to the last one. Okay, so all the rings are actually well within spec. If we're looking at the Yamaha specs here, the end gap anyway. Of course, the oil ring was supposed to be between 0.1 and 0.4. We're good there. They were all less than 0.4. The second rings, they were all pretty good, nearly within spec, ranging between 0.44 and 0.49, whereas the Yamaha original range is 0.30 to 0.45 with a limit of 0.80, so we're good there. Of course, the top rings also were all pretty good, within 0.22 to 0.26 of a millimeter, and the range there for Yamaha for original is 0.15 to 0.25 of a millimeter with the 0.50 millimeter limit. So we're all good there, and it's time to go ahead and put the rings back on.